You know those conversations where someone tells you they're going back to gas after years of driving electric, and everyone at the table goes quiet? That happened at a dinner last month. Successful guy, tech-forward, someone who'd been preaching the EV gospel for 3 years, and he just traded his electric car for a Honda Accord. The room wanted an explanation, and what he said next is the exact story playing out in driveways across America right now, a story the marketing materials conveniently skip over. In 2025, more than 20 million electric vehicles sold worldwide, roughly 1 in every 4 new cars rolling off factory floors. They're everywhere now, in every price range, backed by every major automaker still breathing, and the pitch sounds almost too perfect to argue with. No gas station stops, no oil changes, cheaper to run, better for the planet, and you're driving the future while saving money at the same time. It's the kind of simple math that makes a gas car feel like you're burning cash just to be stubborn. Here's what that math actually looks like when you run it 5 years out. The average new electric car in America loses around 58% of its value in its first 5 years. Some high-profile models lose half of that in barely 2 years. And buy one today for $55,000, and you could watch 30,000 of it simply vanish before the factory warranty even expires. That's not the number that should keep you up at night, though, because sitting under the floor of every single electric vehicle on the road is one component that can, on the wrong car at the wrong time, cost more to replace than the entire vehicle is worth. A bill that doesn't care who owned the car when it was new, it follows the title, and the moment you sign, it's yours. By the time we're done here, you'll know exactly which cars you're looking at, where an electric vehicle genuinely puts money back in your pocket, where it quietly takes it back in ways nobody explains at the dealership, and the 1 5-minute check that separates a smart used EV purchase from a $20,000 disaster waiting in your driveway. Because the difference comes down to details the salesman has absolutely no incentive to walk you through. Let's start with what it actually costs to get in, because the sticker price is the first place the math gets uncomfortable. As of early 2026, the average new electric car in the United States sells for around $55,000, roughly $6,000 to $7,000 more than the average new gas car. Batteries are expensive to manufacture, and that cost lands directly on you the moment you walk into the dealership. For years, the federal government softened that price gap with a tax credit worth up to $7,500 on a qualifying new EV, and that credit anchored the entire value pitch. It made the math work, it closed the gap, and it turned a maybe into a yes for millions of buyers. That credit expired at the end of September 2025. Gone. For most buyers, that $7,500 cushion that used to make the numbers add up simply isn't there anymore. Some states still offer their own smaller rebates, and there are still limited credits floating around on certain used EVs under specific conditions. But the big reliable federal discount that the entire EV industry leaned on for years is over. That means the sticker price you see today is much closer to the price you actually pay, and any advice you've heard about EV savings that assumed that $7,500 credit is now completely out of date. Building your financial model around an incentive that no longer exists is the first mistake buyers are making in 2026, and it's happening every single day. Then there's the infrastructure you'll need at home, because to get the cheap charging an electric car is famous for, you really want a level 2 charger installed in your garage. The unit itself runs anywhere from a few $100s to over $1,000, and the installation, running the right electrical line from your panel, can cost anywhere from $500 to well over $2,000, more if your home's wiring needs an upgrade to handle the load. Call it somewhere between $1,000 and $4,000 all in, and that's before you've driven a single electric mile. Renters and apartment dwellers, this is where the entire cheap charging promise can quietly fall apart, and we'll come back to that. Then there's the tire question, something almost nobody sees coming until they're 12 months in. Electric vehicles are heavy. That battery pack adds hundreds of pounds, and they make instant torque from a standstill, which chews through tires noticeably faster than a gas car. Some owners find themselves replacing tires thousands of miles sooner than they expected, and on many EVs, those are larger, more expensive tires to begin with. It's a small recurring cost next to the sticker price, but it's real, and it quietly chips away at the maintenance savings everyone talks about. So before anything else, you're often paying more upfront than a comparable gas car, plus the cost of building your own refueling station in your garage, plus tires that wear faster once you're actually driving. Now let's talk about where you get that money back, because the running costs are where the electric vehicle story genuinely shines, and this part is real. Start with fuel, because charging an EV at home on a normal residential electricity rate costs the equivalent of paying well under $2 a gallon for gas, sometimes closer to $1, depending on your local power prices. The average American driver spends somewhere around $1,500 to $2,000 a year on gasoline. A lot of EV owners charging at home cut that annual fuel bill to a few hundred. Over 5 years, that's legitimately thousands of dollars staying in your account instead of disappearing into a gas tank. And it's the single most real, most reliable saving in the entire electric vehicle pitch. Then there's maintenance, and this is the part gas car owners consistently underestimate. An electric motor has a tiny fraction of the moving parts of a combustion engine. No oil changes, no spark plugs, no timing belts, no exhaust system, no fuel injectors, no transmission in the traditional sense. Regenerative braking means even the brake pads last dramatically longer because the motor does most of the slowing down before the friction brakes even engage. Study after study puts EV scheduled maintenance costs at roughly half of what a gas car costs to keep running over the same period. Fewer parts, fewer failures, fewer trips to the shop. Added up over 5 years, and on fuel and maintenance alone, an electric vehicle can genuinely save an owner somewhere in the range of $6,000 to $10,000 compared to an equivalent gas car. That's not marketing spin, that's actual money. But here's a cost that's quietly growing every year, and almost nobody factors it into the math up front. Gas taxes are how governments pay to build and repair roads, and you pay them at the pump on every gallon you buy. An EV driver pays none of that, so states have started clawing it back a different way, through special annual registration fees on electric vehicles. Depending on where you live, that extra fee can run anywhere from around $50 a year to over $200, sometimes more, specifically designed to make up for the gas tax revenue you're no longer contributing. It doesn't erase the fuel savings, not even close, but it's a real annual cost that's trending upward, and as more drivers go electric and gas tax revenue keeps falling, you can safely bet those EV-specific fees are going up, not down. Which brings us to the cost on the other side of the ledger that's quietly working against those savings, and for many owners, it's bigger than everything they just saved combined. Depreciation. An electric vehicle on average loses value faster than almost anything else you can drive off a lot. We said it at the top, around 58% of value gone in 5 years for the average electric car, against roughly 45% for the average vehicle overall. For some high-profile models, it's been far worse, cars losing half their value or more in the first 2 years alone. Why so brutal? A few reasons stacking on top of each other. The technology moves fast, so a 3-year-old EV can feel a generation behind on range and charging speed the way a 3-year-old phone feels slow. A massive wave of 3-year lease returns from the EV boom years is flooding the used market right now, and more supply means lower prices. And hanging over all of it is the question every used EV buyer asks and every seller dreads: how healthy is that battery really? Here's what that means in hard numbers. Buy a $55,000 electric car, save yourself $8,000 in fuel and maintenance over 5 years, and then watch the car's value fall by $30,000 or more in that same window. The savings were real, they just got swallowed whole by the depreciation. This is the single most important number in electric vehicle economics, and it's the one number almost nobody runs before they buy. There's a reason so many people quietly lease their EVs instead of buying them outright. Leasing hands the depreciation risk back to the manufacturer. You pay for the years you use the car, and when the lease ends, the plummeting resale value is their problem, not yours. For a technology depreciating this fast, that's not a coincidence. It's the market pricing in exactly how uncertain these cars' future values really are. When the companies building the cars would rather lease them to you than sell them outright, that tells you something about who's absorbing the risk and who's trying to avoid it. The flip side of all this brutal depreciation is the opportunity almost nobody talks about. If new EVs lose half their value in 2 or 3 years, then somebody is buying those 2- and 3-year-old EVs for half price. A car that cost $55,000 new, with plenty of battery warranty left and years of cheap running ahead of it, selling used for under $30,000. For a buyer who knows how to check battery health, the used EV market is quietly one of the best value plays in the entire car world right now, funded entirely by the first owner's losses. Now let's talk about what's sitting underneath the floor, because every electric car is built around one component that dwarfs everything else in cost: the battery pack. It's not a part of the car so much as it is the car, the single most expensive object bolted to the chassis, and it sits under the cabin floor, slowly aging from the day it's built, whether you drive it or not. Lithium batteries degrade. Every one of them, in every EV, loses a small amount of capacity over time and use. Most modern packs are genuinely durable, losing only 1 or 2% of capacity a year under normal conditions, and the good news is that most drivers will never need to replace one during normal ownership. But most is not all. Heat wears them down faster. Constant fast charging wears them down faster. And once a pack degrades far enough or fails outside of warranty, you run into the number that defines the entire risk of EV ownership. A replacement battery pack can cost anywhere from $5,000 on the low end to well over $20,000, and on some models north of $30,000. On an older EV that might only be worth $12,000 or $15,000 on the used market, a failed battery is a financial write-off. The repair costs more than the car. The vehicle is, in the language of the insurance industry, totaled by its own most important part. Now there is good news on the horizon here. Battery cell prices have been falling hard, dropping to roughly $100 per kilowatt hour, and analysts expect replacement costs to keep coming down. But that's cold comfort if your pack fails today at today's prices on a car that's already out of warranty. This is the underground storage tank of the EV world, the liability that follows the vehicle, not the seller. Buy a used EV with a battery that's quietly degraded or nearing the end of its useful life, and you inherit that liability the moment the title transfers. And you would not necessarily know from a test drive, because a slightly tired battery drives almost exactly like a healthy one until the day it doesn't. This is why battery warranties matter more than anything else on the paperwork. Most manufacturers cover the battery for around 8 years, or 100,000 miles, guaranteeing it won't drop below a certain capacity, often 70%, in that window. That warranty is the single most valuable thing protecting an EV owner, which also means the scariest moment in an EV's life is the day that warranty expires, because from that point on, the most expensive component in the car is entirely your problem. Before buying any used EV, a battery health check is not optional. It's the difference between a smart purchase and a $20,000 surprise showing up 2 years after you sign. And unlike a leaking fuel tank, this is one buried liability you can actually inspect before you buy, if you know how. Most EVs will show you an estimated battery health or state of health figure through the car's own menus or through a diagnostic tool, telling you roughly how much of the original capacity is left. A specialist can pull a more detailed report. Compare the car's current full charge range against what it had when new, and you get a rough read on how much life the pack has lost. 5 minutes of checking that number is the single most valuable thing you can do before handing over money for a used electric car, and the fact that almost nobody does it is exactly why the good deals and the disasters sit side by side on the same lot for the same price. There's a second hidden cost that ambushes EV owners, and it has nothing to do with the battery: insurance. Electric vehicles on average cost more to insure than comparable gas cars, sometimes meaningfully more. The reason ties straight back to that battery pack. When an EV is in even a moderate crash, damage anywhere near the battery can force insurers to write the whole car off, because inspecting and certifying a damaged pack as safe is difficult and expensive. Higher repair costs, higher total loss rates, and specialized parts all flow into a higher premium. It's a real line item, and it quietly eats into the fuel savings month after month. Then there's the charging reality that the home charging dream conveniently skips over. Everything we said about cheap fuel assumes you can plug in at home overnight. If you can't, if you rent, park on the street, or live somewhere without a driveway, you're relying on public charging, and public DC fast charging is a completely different economic animal. At many fast chargers, the cost per mile can climb close to and sometimes past what you'd pay for gasoline. Lean on fast charging for most of your miles, and the single biggest EV saving, cheap fuel, can shrink to almost nothing while you wear your battery down faster at the same time. The EV math that works beautifully for a suburban homeowner with a garage can quietly fall apart for a city apartment renter, and nobody mentions that in the commercial. So here's the existential question sitting underneath every EV purchase right now. The savings on fuel and maintenance are absolutely real, thousands of dollars year after year, but they are constantly racing against depreciation that runs faster than any gas car, an insurance premium that runs higher, a charging cost that depends entirely on where you sleep at night, and a battery liability that sits under the floor waiting for the warranty to run out. Get those factors on your side. Own the car long enough to bank the fuel savings, charge at home, buy a model that holds its value, keep the battery healthy, and an EV can be genuinely, substantially cheaper than a gas car over its life. Get them against you. Buy the wrong model. Sell it too soon. Depend on fast charging, and it can cost you far more than the gas car you were trying to escape. The market is sorting this out in real time. When that federal credit expired in September 2025, new EV sales dropped sharply, and something fascinating happened underneath. Most brands had to cut prices to make up for the lost credit, which dragged their used values down further. But used Teslas actually went up in price because Tesla buyers were less dependent on the credit and the supply of certain models tightened. The used market split in two. some brands sliding, others holding firm, and the gap between a smart used buy and a money pit widened. Here's where that leaves a buyer in 2026. The average used EV now sells for around $34,000, only about $1,000 more than a comparable used gas car, and a huge share of used EVs are now going for under $25,000. A 3-year-old electric car that's stickered at $55,000 new, with years of warranty left and cheap running ahead of it, for the price of a basic economy car. The used EV market, where the depreciation is brutal for the first owner, has quietly become one of the best deals in all of car buying for anyone who knows how to check a battery, and one of the worst traps for anyone who doesn't. The electric car is not a scam, and it's not a miracle. It's a genuinely different economic machine from the gas car it's replacing, with the savings moved to different places and the risks buried in places most buyers never think to look. The fuel is cheap, the maintenance is cheap, the depreciation is savage, and the battery is a liability that follows the car. Whether an EV is the smartest money you ever spent on a vehicle or the most expensive mistake comes down to how well you understood all of that before you signed and not one day after. The cheap fuel keeps the promise, the depreciation breaks it, and the battery under the floor keeps the risk. You decide.